Hey guys, if you're enjoying the content that I've been putting up, be sure to show your support by subscribing to the channel. Now that we got that part out of the way, let's get into the video. Final Fantasy XIV is a massive game with thousands of hours of content. What I'm going to do here is break down some of the major plot points for those of you who want to know more about Eorzea, but may not have time to experience it all firsthand. This time we're covering the story of the Bosjan Resistance and the Blades of Gunhildr. Back in Kugane, after your adventure with Makoto and the Garleans at the Orban Monastery, a story that I've covered in depth on this channel and will leave a link to in the description for those of you who haven't seen it yet, you run into a man named Keaton, who was about to send a letter to the Rising Stones for you. Hancock has something important that he wants to talk to you about, and since he has worked with you before, you go to hear him out. Hancock has gotten a message from Lord Hien of Doma that the Bosjan Resistance is looking for people to help them fight the Empire. Of course, your name came up. They are a small nation to the west of Dalmasca and were one of the first ones to fall to the Empire. But with the Empire dealing with unrest in its borders, the Bosjans are fighting back. If you want to know more, he thinks it best that you talk to Hien. You find him and Yugiri standing outside of the ruins of Doma Castle, the site of the battle where you pushed the Garleans out of Doma. He's joined by a Hrothgar named Marsak of the Bosjan Resistance. While his people are trying to reclaim their land, Hien has heard that the 4th Legion has been making plans of its own. The Legion holds the lands of Naggia, Bosja, and Dalmasca in an iron grip while using Dalmasca as their base of operations, but recently they've been shifting the bulk of their forces to Bosja. The plan was to attack them before they could assemble their forces, but the Resistance doesn't have the manpower for that. The Dalmascans still haven't stopped fighting amongst themselves, so they can't help. However, Hien has an idea. The Domans had needed someone or something that they could rally behind to help them form an organized rebellion. The Bosjans are much the same. But since they don't have any living monarchs, Marsak and his allies decided that the ancient weapons of the past, Gunhildr's blades, would help boost the morale of the people. They were the weapons used by the members of Queen Gunhildr's elite guard, who had the same name as their weapons. They were said to be blessed by the gods, and their wielders became legends during the time fighting the Allagans in the 3rd Astral Era. They were the most dedicated soldiers, and if one of them died, their weapon would be passed down to the next in line, who would fight just as fiercely as his predecessor. The Gunblade became the most famous of these weapons, but it wasn't the only one, just the coolest. Marsak wants these ancient weapons reforged. With an army armed with them, the people would feel they're blessed by the gods and will fight harder to drive the Legion out. 90% of fighting is mental, so he's not wrong. It could work. The task won't be easy, which is why Marsak has been recruiting the best and brightest, and he'd love for you to join. Of course you agree to do it, and you hitch a ride to the base of the Bosjan Resistance in a place called Gongos. When you arrive, Marsak introduces you to Basar Jin, the leader of the Resistance, and after introductions, you see your old friend Geralt, the weaponsmith. With the two of you working together, restoring the ancient weapons seems a lot more plausible, although Geralt is just working there to pay off his debt to Rowena. Since she's been supplying the Resistance and they needed a smith, she kind of forced him into the role. With all that done, Masija, another of the high-ranking Resistance members, gives you the rundown of the plan. Reforging the weapons will be a bit more complicated than just grabbing the materials and bringing them to Geralt. Almost all information about the weapons and their wielders was lost during the 4th Umbral Calamity. They have been gathering bits of information and making progress, but they don't know what made the weapons so powerful. The stories say that the Queen put holy markings on each weapon that gave them power, but there are no records of the marks. However, there were replicas of the blades complete with the markings. The only problem is they were destroyed in Bosja Citadel. 15 years ago, the Garleans were trying to connect to the moon Dalamud. They thought it could be a source of incredible power, and they built a lunar transmitter to harness it. However, when they turned it on, it fired back with raw energy, destroying the Citadel and everything and everyone around it. Still, there is a way to find the inscriptions. However, that explanation is a bit more complicated and better left to someone smarter, which is why they brought in your good friend Makoto. Her mastery of etherology is something that the Resistance knew they'd need to complete their mission, so the Eorzean Alliance sent over one of the smartest members of the students of Baldesion. She thought that with her knowledge and Geralt's skill, they could complete the task, but she hadn't been able to do what some of the ancient inhabitants of Gongos had done in the past. They were able to use special crystals to manipulate people's memories, adding new ones, removing old ones, and the like. The story seemed ridiculous until the Resistance found the crystals that had been used in the practice. When they couldn't figure out how to use them, that was when they had sought help from Makoto. Makoto starts to explain what she's discovered about the crystals, but once again she dives into smart people speak and has to dumb it down for all of you. The long and short of it is that people are made up of 3 different types of ether: physical, the ether of the soul, and the ether of the mind. It takes all 3 types of ether to make a person. If they didn't have the physical ether, they would be ghosts. Without the mental ether, they would be zombies, but they would still have some memories left behind by their mental ether. The crystals can resonate with people's memories, letting you see their memories and interact with them. However, there are 2 types of memories. Explicit memories are things that you actively remember, while implicit memories are stored deep within you and are things that you might not even know that you know. Like if you ever smelt something that seemed familiar but you can't remember exactly where you knew it from, that's an implicit memory. While the explanation isn't all that difficult to understand, a demonstration would be easier. And while you don't have one of the ancient seers on hand, your gift from the Echo to see into people's past is pretty much the same thing. At least Makoto thinks so. While she does have the Echo, her gift isn't the same as yours, so she couldn't use the crystals. She decides to test it out, and Geralt is going to be a guinea pig. Although he's not the most cooperative of test subjects, you manage to use the crystal and enter his mind, and you even manage to draw Makoto into Geralt's memory of his time with Rowena. Turns out the 2 of them were very close, although Geralt swears that the memory isn't the same as what really happened. Makoto even has an answer for this. Woman has an answer for everything. Implicit memories sometimes alter themselves just in case the memory is unpleasant and would hurt the owner. But with a little prodding, you can discover the truth. Now, knowing that the technique will work, all you have to do is find someone who has actually seen the replicas of the weapons you want to recreate. The only problem is that anyone who may have seen the weapons died when the Citadel was destroyed, and if anyone did survive, they would be Garlean soldiers and probably not willing to help. The Echo suddenly takes over Makoto, and the 2 of you are hit with a vision of you and Makoto standing around Cid as you dive into his memories. Unlike your gift, Makoto's Echo lets you see the future. The presence of the Seer Crystal let you see her vision as well. Marsak and the other Bosnians know Cid's name well since he's the son of the man who led the meteor project that destroyed their home, although they didn't know that he led the Garland Ironworks. While they don't like Cid since his father Midas ran the project in Bosnia, it may have been possible that he saw the replicas, meaning the Bosnians have to place their hope in not only a Garlean, but the son of the man who ruined them. Some members of the Ironworks are in Rauger's Reach, so you head there to track down Cid. You find Lelicia, the newest member of the Ironworks who talks entirely too much, and Jesse, who after you tell her what's going on, gives Cid a call. He agrees to meet you at the Doman Enclave as soon as possible. Before you head off to meet him, Jesse lets you know that the Bosnia incident is something really hard for Cid to talk about. He had tried to stop his father, but he had failed, and to this day he blames himself. Diving into his mind and seeing that event from Cid's point of view may not be pleasant for any of you, so Jesse wants you to be careful. You meet up with Cid at the Enclave, and he doesn't even hesitate before offering to grant his assistance to the Bosnians. He's even spoken to Hien about aiding in Doma's reconstruction, mainly because he wants to do all he can to undo the damage done by the Empire since he did help make the weapons that they've used to conquer nations. As for Bosnia, with them facing the 4th Legion, Cid knows they're going to need all the help they can get because the Legion is made up of some incredible warriors. When you reach Gongos, Makoto gives Cid a rundown of what he will need to do and how the deep dive into his memories will work. All he has to do is think back on his time at the Citadel, and you and Makoto will do the rest. With Crystal in hand, you, Makoto, and Cid dive into the Garlean's memory of the Citadel before it was destroyed. However, unlike your trip into Geralt's memories, things are distorted and unstable in the mind of Cid, mainly due to the fact that he spent so long trying to block out those thoughts that his subconscious tries to prevent you from accessing the memory. Roads are shattered that should be whole, forcing you to find ways to jog Cid's memory so he can remember the place as it truly was. The further you go, Cid's subconscious creates monsters to force you out of his mind. As you face them, stronger and stronger creatures appear, until Cid's mind pulls out all of the stops and summons a version of Bahamut himself to deal with you. I can understand repressing bad memories, but this is a bit ridiculous. Beating the Primal helps clear Cid's mind a bit, and you come across the moment where a young Cid tried to convince his father that the Meteor Project was riskier than they thought. The moon Dalamud had the power to store solar power, and if it released all that it had been storing for generations, then there was no way the tower at the Citadel could contain it all. His father wouldn't listen. He wouldn't even look at the research that Cid brought to him, which was out of character for the man. Makoto thinks she knows why, but now isn't the time to say it since you have other things to do. At the heart of the facility, you do find the replicas of Gunhilda's blades, complete with their inscriptions. However, there's a lot wrong with Cid's memory here. For starters, he sees an image of himself arguing with Emperor Solus, who he knew wasn't there. The image changes to Varus, Zenos' father, and the man shoots Cid. Cid gets pulled so deep into the memory that he starts to die from the wound of his past, but Makoto reminds him that he's not a part of the memory, and he snaps out of it. However, Varus wasn't truly there either, and is in fact nothing more than the deepest barrier of Cid's subconscious blocking his path to the most painful memory of his past. Varus goes to expel you from Cid's mind, but with the power of the Echo, you conjure versions of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn to help you take down Varus. Now, finally getting to see Zenos' father in action, I understand fully why the man didn't try to fight his dad straight up. With the aid of your friends, you bring down Varus, allowing Cid to finally see his true memories from that day. The reason his mind had fought so hard to keep the truth from him was because it wasn't Varus who had shot him, but his own father. However, it wasn't of his own will. Metis Garland had already been tempered by Bahamut when his experiments had activated the moon and woke the dragon, which is why he acted so out of character and the entire reason for the destruction of the Citadel. Neither Cid nor his father was to blame. It had all been orchestrated by Bahamut. With the truth known, you all leave Cid's memories to let the Bosnians know that you found what you needed. With the inscriptions, Geralt won't take any time to recreate the weapons, and knowing that the Empire and Cid's father weren't to blame for the destruction of Bosja puts Basal Jin at ease. And he apologizes to Cid for judging him so harshly, despite all he's done to help the victims of the Empire. Surprisingly, the trip into Cid's mind burnt up all the ether stores left in the crystal, and even though Makoto thinks she can figure out how to restore it, that'll be the last trip down memory lane for a while. With that done, Cid leaves to take care of his own work, but in a bold move, Makoto, in the most obvious way ever, shoots her shot at Cid, who completely misses what she meant. And some of the smartest people can be so dumb sometimes. In any case, it's time. Geralt has gotten started on the weapons, and Marsak and the others are preparing to attack the Legion. Meanwhile, in Dalmasca, the 4th Legion spies already know about the Resistance working on reforging Gunhilda's blades, but they aren't worried. They have something special planned for not only the Bosjans, but the main force of the Garlean Empire as well. And what they intend to use to wipe them both out is a primal, known as the Lady of Blades. When you return to Gongos, Marsak is pleased to tell you that Geralt has done it. He's reforged enough of the blades of Gunhilda to equip an entire squad of elite soldiers, and it worked out just as Marsak and the others had hoped. Having the blades being reforged and the Queen's Guard restored helped motivate the resistance, making them believe that they can actually retake their homeland. In fact, they've already taken back an outpost in the Bosnian southern front. Marsak sends you to the front lines so you can see for yourself exactly how the fighting is going. When you reach the front, Basal Jin introduces you to the new Queen's Guard, and you immediately see why they were able to motivate the soldiers. They look awesome. And when you see them in action on the field, you'll understand that they are far more than just flashy. They can really, really fight. And adding your battle prowess to theirs, Basal Jin believes that it won't be long before you all take Castrum Lacus Latori back from the Legion. The Castrum is a fortress once called Alamu, when it was under Bosnian control. It was named after the eagles that used to live in the mountains beside it, and it's the reason Basal Jin decided to call the mission to take it back Operation Eagle's Nest. He's eager to get you in the field, but Makoto wants to talk to you about the crystal focus that you had used to dive into Cid's memories before you run off and start destroying stuff. When you had used the crystal on Cid, you had drained all of the ether out of it, but Makoto discovered that it can absorb ether just like the auracite you had found in Ivalice, which means if you find an energy source that matches its ethereal frequency, you can refill it. But the crystals are extremely rare, and getting enough to refill it may be impossible. However, there are currents of ether with the right frequency coming from the land in the areas around the front. The only problem is they're in areas heavily occupied by Imperials. While it would be safer to wait until the fighting died down to charge the crystal, Masija doesn't think the resistance can afford to wait. As the battles go on, more and more people will die, but she believes the crystal focus could help end the fighting faster, or at least ease the mental strain on the soldiers' minds, keeping them fighting at full force for longer. To speed the process of finding the locations with the needed ether, Cid's been working on making a tracking device. Makoto is going to go help him finish, but while she's gone, she wants you and Masija to check out a spot that she thinks has an ether current you can use. Before you head out, Marsic brings word that a few soldiers wanted to talk to you just to let you know what you'll be facing when you step on the battlefield. This won't be your first time fighting Garleans, so you should be well aware of how dangerous their Magitech can be, and you put that knowledge to use, helping the Resistance gain ground against the Legion. When you return from the fighting, Makoto has made it back with the shipment of Cid's ether monitoring devices. Those devices were brought by Lelicia, the overly talkative fangirl from the Ironworks. She brought sensors that can be set up next to the ether currents and can be activated from the base, letting you lock on to specific ether signatures that you might need. The process is both more complicated and time-consuming than it sounds, but once you place a few of the sensors near some currents, Makoto can start the process of tracing the proper ether frequency needed to refill the focus. However, despite the Legion losing ground, the sites where the sensors need to be placed are still in Legion-controlled lands, so Makoto asks you to place them for her since she can't exactly fight. You only have to deal with a small amount of soldiers since the Resistance is doing more than enough to keep the Legion occupied. Once set, Makoto presses a button from the base and the device burrows underground, a pretty convenient way of making sure the Legion doesn't break the thing, and you head back to the base for your next assignment. When you make it back to the base, you see Masija getting harassed by soldiers who are angry that she's staying at the camp while they're all fighting. She's about to fight them, but Marsic shows up stopping them. But he promises that if the soldiers insult her again, he'll kill them himself. She's anything but grateful, and she makes that known as she heads off to talk to Makoto and Lelicia. While Bajra had rose to prominence and from the outside looked like a nation where everyone thrived, it wasn't. There was a large gap between the nobles and the commoners, one that stayed even beneath imperial rule. Even though Marsic dreams of a united Bajra where everyone is equal regardless of birth, there are others who want to go back to the old ways. Masija had come from nothing, but when she was young, the Imperials saw her dedication to bettering herself and decided to pay special attention to her, drawing even more ridicule from her more wealthy peers. Marsic hates how the other Resistance soldiers treat her, but he has to look at the big picture. Disciplining soldiers for bigotry while they're in the middle of a battle could cause more problems than it fixes, and so, for now, he won't say anything about it, and he doesn't want you to either. Makoto promises to let you know as soon as the ether analysis is complete, but she does warn you that you will have to set more sensors even deeper in Legion territory. That'll have to wait until the Resistance reclaims more ground from the Imperials, or you won't live long enough to place the devices, which means it's back to fighting you go. As the battle against the Legion continues, Makoto manages to find a third site that will greatly improve their chances of tracing the right type of ether. The site is located in some ancient Bajran ruins that date back to the Third Astral Era, and are overrun with the undead, so it'll be quite dangerous. But that doesn't even slow you down, and once you place the device, you return to yet another problem. While the device you planted is working fine, the one at the base is not getting any readings. Lelicia knows what's wrong, and she can fix it, but it'll take less time to simply go get a replacement part from Doma. Masija offers to go and get the device since, with the machine down, there's nothing for her to do, plus she wants to see Doma, and likely get away from the soldiers who treat her like crap because of her birth. Meanwhile, at the very ruins that you just left, the 4th Legion has uncovered the Save the Queen, the sword wielded by Queen Gunhilda herself, meaning that they are getting way closer to completing their goal. While Masija is away, the Resistance pushes the Legion back even further. Very soon they'll be driven back into Castrum and finally out of Bajra. Even more good news arrives after the device at the base is repaired. Makoto finally manages to track down the proper ether source needed to refill the crystal and restore its memory manipulating powers. Extracting the ether and restoring the crystal's functionality is delicate work, so Makoto and Masija are going to come with you this time, meaning you'll have to protect them. After you deal with some Legion soldiers who ambush your friends while they work, they get back to it, refilling the crystal. Once it's done, Masija takes it, pulling her gun on Makoto. You hold off the strong urge to kill the woman because you don't want to get your friend killed, and Masija, the Garlean spy, takes her. In all honesty, I don't really blame her. What's the point in risking your life fighting for people who want to restore a nation that doesn't even respect you? Turning on the Bajrans? I can forgive that. Kidnapping Makoto? Not so much. You return to the base and let Marsic and the Blades know what happened. Marsic wants to make rescuing Makoto top priority, and Ba Seo Jin agrees, but first they have to find out if any other resistance members were working with Masija. To make matters worse, while he wants to save Makoto, he doesn't have the troops to spare. While the war is going well, the soldiers are already spread thin. Shifting their forces could cause them to lose ground. But the fact that they took Makoto alive means they need her for something, which gives you time to find out where she's being held. But we already know where they've taken her. I mean, it's pretty obvious, to be honest. Lilija uses the equipment to track the ether given off by the crystal that Masija stole, and she finds exactly what you feared. Makoto and the crystal are being held in Castrum Lacus Littori. Meanwhile, Makoto wakes, surrounded by Garlean soldiers and Masija. Masija doesn't waste any time, getting right to what she wants to know. She wants to know how Makoto can see the future. Makoto refuses to answer anything until the woman tells her exactly why she's working for the Empire. In truth, she simply trusts that Noah von Gebrandt will build a nation of equality and fairness. Even though he is an Imperial, he doesn't judge those under him by anything other than their merits. He even runs the lands he rules in the same way, and since he's seeking to build his own nation, Masija thinks it'll be far better than the Bozja that persecuted her and those like her. Even Marsic and Ba Seo Jin, who claim they want to build a better nation, are willing to sweep prejudices under the rug for the good of the nation, which means no matter what they claim, their Bozja would treat Masija and those like her with the same disdain as the old Bozja had, and that disdain goes even deeper than any of you know. To prove how cruel Bozja nobility were, she tells Makoto the story of Queen Gunhilda and how her followers used and betrayed her. Before the Fourth Umbral Calamity, Gunhilda's blades saw the end of their kingdom coming, so they came up with a plan to use the power of the Holy Blade save the Queen to save Bozja. They would use the Queen's body to channel the sword's power and summon a primal. The only problem was that if the Queen used her body to summon a god, she would die. So instead, Gunhilda's blades took a lowborn shrine maiden and made her the stand-in for the Queen. Wanting to serve her nation and stop the calamity, she did it without hesitation. However, instead of dying or being consumed by the power, she was able to channel it and remain herself, because unbeknownst to the Blades, the common-born woman they had chosen possessed the Echo. Despite giving herself for her people, the fact that she was a commoner with the power of a god scared the Blades and they murdered her. To make matters worse, they lied and said the woman had been consumed by the power and had to be put down before burying her with the blade, letting the world believe the lie. Masija doesn't give a direct answer as to how she knows this, but her claim that this was a family secret implies that she's a descendant of the sacrificed queen. Now that she's answered Makoto's question, she demands to know how she can see the future. Makoto only tells the woman a half-truth, but Masija has ways of making her talk, and they won't be pleasant. The time has come. Gunhilda's blades gather at your base, and you all prepare to storm Castrum and remove the Legion from Bozja to save the nation and your friend. It won't be easy. The Castrum is run by a powerful mage, and the warrior Lionsus Hellos is a battle-hungry lunatic who is so strong that I'd like to see him go one-on-one with Zenos. But that won't stop you. It's time to save Makoto. You and your allies cut a swath through the Legion's defenses, freeing prisoners and forcing some of the Legion's strongest warriors to retreat. However, Ba Seo Jin thinks something's wrong. The fortress fell too easily, the soldiers retreated too fast, and there's still no sign of Makoto or Masija. Not until Masija brutally kicks her off of a balcony. She puts a blade to Makoto's neck and orders you to step forward and activate the crystal so the three of you can enter the memories of the Holy Blade. Makoto begs you to let her die instead of giving in, but you do as Masija orders, traveling into the Save the Queen's past and seeing the moment that Gunhilda's blades assassinated the hero queen. Even knowing what had been done to her, the queen's spirit is okay with her death since it meant that she saved her people, but Masija appears beside her, whispering in her ear that her murder wasn't done to save her people. It was simply done out of spite. The rage that builds up in Queen Gunhilda is so great that Masija is able to channel her into the physical world through the power of the sword. Stepping out into the world directly in front of the reformed Queen's Guard, who are wielding the same weapons they used to murder her, pushes the Queen over the edge, and she snaps, using her power to temper each and every member of the Guard before turning her power on the rest of you. You hold off the attack as best you can while Marsic retrieves an injured Makoto, but Queen Gunhilda's power is too much even for you. Fortunately, Bwagi of the Damascan Resistance shows up and shoots Masija, causing her to lose focus for a moment and allowing you all to escape. Back at the camp, you explain how Masija manipulated the memories of the Queen, causing her to turn against the Bajans, but that's not the worst part. Having never dealt with a primal before, Marsak believes that the blades can be saved, but despite advances that have been made on the subject, the only cure for tempering is death. With this new information, you head back to Gongos, where reinforcements from Dalmasca have finally arrived, and word is spread that the Domans are on their way as well. Until then, there's nothing left for you to do but plan your next move. Meanwhile, in Castrum, with access to the primal, the commander Menenius believes that it will be easier to move forward with their plans. However, Lion warns him not to take Masija for granted, or their future victory may not be as certain as he thinks. Since that day, the Battle of the Southern Front has been going poorly, despite the fact that the Bajans have been getting help from the Dalmascans as well as the Domans. Masija appears on the battlefield at random, summoning Gunhilda and either wiping out large groups of Bajans or taking control of them. Basal Jin thinks that Masija could wipe them all out at once if she wanted to, but Bwagi doesn't think the situation is that hopeless. Him and the other Dalmascans think that the 4th Legion is low on resources. Since Varys died, Garlemald has been in the middle of a civil war, and despite orders, Gabranth refuses to bring the 4th Legion back to Garlemald. He plans on building his own nation in Dalmasca, and with him separating from the Empire, he has severely limited the troops that he can use. He figured the same thing, and launched an attack of his own against the Legion, stopping even the small amount of reinforcements that they can muster from reaching Basja. However, they still have the tempered blades on their side, but since you brought the Scions back to the source, you and the Scions have learned how to reverse tempering, although it does take a lot of ether and can't really be done on the battlefield. Makoto blames herself, claiming that if she hadn't been captured then none of this would have happened. Geralt of all people talks a bit of sense into her, because if her being captured is the reason Gunhilda's blades got tempered, then he's even more to blame for forging their weapons in the first place. At the end of the day, the blame lies with one person, Masija. Speaking of her, a soldier runs up telling you all that she's appeared on the battlefield again. Makoto runs off to see, and not wanting her to get killed, you follow. Since you're the only other person who can't be tempered, Marsak and the others stay behind. You find Makoto spying on Masija as she confronts the Bajan soldiers who had tormented her for her lowborn status, something that one of them does even while he's on his knees in front of her. I respect that. He stuck to his prejudiced convictions right up until Masija used the Queen's power to temper him. Lion chides her for not tempering the other two, until she orders her new slave to kill his former friends. She trades a few words with Lion about having already set up the next part of her plan and not needing him to order her around. Clearly there's some bad blood there, especially when he pretends not to see you while loudly announcing that he's been ordered not to help her to let you know that he won't interfere if you try to stab the woman. When he leaves, Makoto's echo activates, showing you both a vision of Masija leading a squad of soldiers toward a Bajan ruin where you, Makoto, and the Bajans ambush her. She tries to summon Gunhilda, but the crystal focus is out of ether. The vision ends, and the two of you return to Gongos to let the others know what you saw. Makoto has come to the conclusion that the thing Masija is summoning isn't a primal or icon at all. She thinks the sword saved the Queen was imbued with the memories of Queen Gunhilda when she died, and Masija has been using the crystal focus to draw them out. A lot like something you have a lot of experience with. Auracite. The Save the Queen is quite possibly a sword made entirely out of auracite. It's something that you've never seen before, but between the sword and the crystal foci, it all seems like Allegan technology, although how the Bajans got it is anybody's guess. I'd say they stole it when they were at war with them in ancient times, which is most likely, or they had an Allegan friend who gave it to them as a gift. That's not important. What really matters is that the image of the Queen that Masija summoned in Castrum was only a small bit of the Queen's power. The true power is still locked in the sword, and if Masija manages to do what the original Queen did and become the vessel for the sword's power, then there's no telling how strong she'll be. The image of the Queen is something that the Warrior of Light could probably beat in a straight-up fight. A full-powered Queen Gunhilda may be too much even for her. Fortunately, Masija hasn't found enough crystals to do what she needs, or she would have already done it, and you need to act now if you want to stop her. Either kill her or take the sword from her. Either way, it'll end her summonings once and for all. After what Makoto saw in her vision, she believes that's more plausible than the Bajans think. The sightings of Masija and the Queen have been fewer and fewer, and while the Bajans think it's because that they've been engaging their enemies less, Makoto thinks it's because the crystal focus is running out of ether, and the amount of times Masija can summon the queen are running out. And you know firsthand how much time it took to even find the right ether stores to fill the crystal the first time. Once it's drained, it takes even longer for the land to produce that same type of ether again. Her theory would explain why Masija had only tempered one of her former tormentors instead of all three, and after letting your friends know about the vision you had of ambushing Masija at the ruins during the storm, the Bosnians get a little more hopeful about their chances, especially when a call comes in that a storm is brewing on the southern front. Marsak and the others prepare their forces, and you and Makoto join them to go hunt down Masija once and for all. Makoto's vision is extremely accurate, and you find Masija right where you expected. And just like in the vision, when she goes to summon the queen, it doesn't work. However, the vision had ended too early. If it hadn't, you would have seen the Magitech war machines break through the wall to surround you and your allies. Masija knows that Makoto had used her gifts to see what would happen. However, Masija now has that gift too. She seemingly gave it to herself by using the machine she had hooked Makoto to when she'd taken her prisoner. So instead of having the upper hand, this turns into a fight that Makoto joins. Masija came prepared, complete with new high-tech flight armor. While you and the others deal with the armor, Makoto faces off against Masija on her own. You down the armor, but more of Masija's mind-controlled troops show up to delay you while her allies get the doors open. One of the suits goes to kill Makoto, but Rostic, the gunbreaker who trained Thancred, shows up along with Bwagi and more reinforcements. Masija summons Gunhilda's blades to guard her back while she goes into the ruins, and Makoto chases her. Either the woman is suicidal, or she's gotten way more confident in her combat abilities. Either way, she's going to end up dead. Fortunately for her, you follow while some of the others deal with the Magitech. Makoto still can't remember what Masija did to her after she tied her up, but she does know that if the woman is putting so much effort into getting into the ruins, that she knows the crystals she needs are inside. And if you don't stop her, she'll complete her mission and absorb the full power of the Save the Queen and will become the second coming of Queen Gunhilda herself. So you, Makoto, and a few other members of the resistance head deeper into the ruins to confront the woman, her guards, and whatever trap she set for you. The first thing you face calls itself Trinity Seeker, and in some twisted way, Masija has fused three of the members of Gunhilda's blades, Blaz, Velibor, and Aji, into a single creature. You bring down your former allies and head deeper into the ruins, facing monsters, machines, and even the dead who are drawn back to fight for their queen, until you come across another monster formed from the tempered blades. This one is made up of Zevin, Isolde, and Stanek. While a cure for tempering has been found, it doesn't work on people who are too far gone. And while I'm no expert, I think having your ether fused into a deformed monstrous body counts as too far gone. After finishing off more of your former allies, you reach the bottom of the ruins where Masija stands before a giant crystal. Using it to absorb the power of the sword into her body, she becomes the new Queen Gunhilda. She is as powerful as you feared, and now killing her is the only way to end this. However, when she realizes that your power rivals hers, she decides that if she can't rule Bosnia, then she'll destroy it. But as she channels her power, a vision of the former queen appears and whispers something to her, causing her to stop fighting and transform back to normal. The others arrive to see Masija down with a smile on her face, and surprisingly when Makoto checks the woman, she isn't dead. There's no time to wait around, so you all grab her and leave before more Imperials show up. Back at your base on the southern front, Basal Jin and the others celebrate the fact that not only did you apprehend Masija, but you recovered the blade. It did come at a high price, but now they can continue their fight against the Legion. Makoto is still worried about Masija, who they have locked up in Gongos. Marsak plans on having her stand trial once the Legion's been dealt with. While he understands that his people's treatment of hers is what made her turn traitor, it's no excuse for what she did. And I disagree. The entire reason the Bosnians are fighting the Empire is because of how the Garleans treat people who are different from them. And judging by the way the Bosnians treat the so-called lowborn, they don't disagree with the Garleans' form of oppression. They just want the right to be the oppressor, which even if they get their land back from the Garleans, they'll eventually be on the receiving end of a resistance against them. As for the Save the Queen, Rostic tried to destroy it, but he couldn't even make a dent in it, so they decided to give it to Makoto since she's the best person to have the weapon. That way she can study it and find a way to put it to good use. The moment she touches it, the echo hits her, and she sees a vision of herself falling out of an airship and plummeting to her death. You see it too, and you all decide to head back to Gongos to rest. Before you leave, you see a fleet of Garlean ships fly over as the Legion's reinforcements finally arrive. With airships at their command, there's little the Bajans can do to fight them, and it seems like this war has gone from bad to worse. But one way or another, it's all about to come to an end very, very soon. Back in Gongos, Marsek lets you know that they found out where the 4th Legion's last stronghold is. They've abandoned Castrum Lacus Litore and are gathering at Zadnor. The Resistance has already sent some soldiers to their stronghold, but they have a fleet of warships guarding it, so it's not that easy to get into. The good news is, since Gunhilda is no longer around to temper his troops, Basar Jin is sending his reserve forces out to Zadnor. And of course, you're going too. Zadnor is nothing like the Bajan front. The area hadn't exactly been safe even before the Legion took over. The 4th Umbral Calamity caused the area to become overcharged with Earth Ether, and miners settled in and took all of the valuable resources from the land. Once they were all gone, the settlers left, leaving the land empty until the Imperials built their outpost there. To make matters worse, they brought in a lot of ships from Dalmasca, led by the Dalriada. The massive warship hasn't moved since it landed, but it's in a spot that makes it extremely dangerous. But Basar Jin doesn't think it'll be a better base than Castrum was if they don't give them time to get settled in. He's ready to push the Legion out of his lands, but first the airships that keep flying overhead and dropping bombs have to be dealt with. And fortunately, Cid shows up to lend a hand. The first thing he does is let you all know that some of the damage to the land, like the floating rocks for instance, were caused by the Bajnan incident. When Dalamud crashed, the damage it did spread far and wide, so of course Baja wasn't spared either. There's a plus side to that. Cid used the Altered Ether to build a barrier around the base to protect them from airstrikes, with a few supplies from the Dalmascan resistance, and a bit of creativity from Lilja. She may be new and a bit goofy, but apparently she really is brilliant. The barrier only covers the base itself, so if the Dalriada starts to get into the fight, the soldiers on the front lines won't make it, especially since neither the Eastern Alliance nor the Bajans have any airships of their own. But with all the extra ether in the land, and Cid getting pressured into helping, they have somebody who can figure out a way to deal with the warship. Since the Domans, the Ironworks, and of course the Warrior of Light is helping out, Basar Jin feels that the only way to repay his allies is to win. So you all get to work. And Lilja and Makoto already have work for you to do. The Resistance wants to advance on the Legion, but to do that they need protection, which means they need some more of those barriers. While there's a lot of residual ether, it's not enough to make more outposts, so you'll have to redirect some of the ether currents. The Ironworks has built a device to do just that, and they need you to put it in a few different locations for them, a lot like what you did on the southern front. While you do that, Cid will work on dealing with the Dalriada. It takes Makoto and Lilja a bit of time to find a good spot for the devices, but once they do, you head out into the field to place them. Zadnor is extremely dangerous outside of the barriers, but of course you manage to set the first device so they can see if the things actually work at all. When you make it back, Makoto's echo shows you a vision of her and Cid on an airship. An Imperial ship swoops in to attack them, and Makoto throws up a barrier to block it, only to get knocked over the side of the ship, while you look up from the battlefield below, unable to help. Both of you saw the vision, but Makoto decides to keep it from Lilja, and she wants you to do the same, especially since nothing can change her visions anyway, and if she has to die to help win the war, she's okay with it. While Lilja is checking on the results of the ether manipulation, Basar Jin is trying to decide on what to do with Masija. The people want her executed right away, but he thinks she should be put on trial and given a fair sentence. While she did commit some crimes, she was a soldier, so her superiors should be the ones to take the brunt of the blame for her actions, a sentiment that the Warrior of Light agrees with. With the results in from the device you set out, a new barrier is made and the Bajans are able to craft another outpost, taking more land on their path to the Dalriada. But they need to get closer, which means you have to place more devices. You take down more Imperials as you get the devices set in place, and move closer and closer to the Legion's parked warship. While the Resistance works on pushing the Legion further back, Lilja and Makoto are trying to figure out just how to deal with the Dalriada itself. They found something, so Lilja goes to Doma to bring it to Cid, but not before asking if Makoto wanted her to send a love letter to the man since she's too shy to talk to him about her feelings. She's always had a hard time being normal, and she spent a lot of her life being a scholar, so she doesn't even really know how to deal with people. She does like Cid, although she claims she only thinks of him as a friend. Survey says that's a lie, but we're in a war, so there are more important things to do than worry about Makoto's love life. However, Geralt overhears, and he doesn't have anything better to do than worry about it. Well, he should be making me weapons, but since it'll take me forever to gather all of the parts for my new relic, he does have time for a break or two. Meanwhile, the 4th Legion is still hard at work on their newest toy. Menenius tells Lion that they still need time, something he's not happy about since the Resistance is getting closer to them. He thinks it'll be best to withdraw to Dalmasca and regroup with the rest of the Legion, but Menenius refuses to run away and leave all the things they found for the Resistance to grab. So, to buy some time, he sends Lion out to delay you, something he has no problem doing. As more and more battles are fought, the Resistance sets up another outpost even closer to the Dalriada. Along the way, they find out why the Legion came to Zadnor in the first place. There are Allagan relics on the plateau, which makes this situation almost identical to how the 14th Legion found the Ultima weapon underneath Alamigo. The scouts say that what the Legion has found is big, so they may have found something exactly like the Ultima weapon, or worse. The thing's been fully dug up, but they haven't loaded it into the Dalriada yet, probably because Menenius plans on testing the weapon on you, which means you have to deal with them before they can do it. Cid's already got an idea on how to do that too, and it involves the crystal focus that's been used a lot out in Bajda. He plans on using it to cause the ceruleum fueling the Dalriada to explode. Of course, you'll need a lot of ether for that, but if it works, he'll be able to disable the ship. However, you still need to get close to it. Bwagi offers to let him use his airship to carry the focus since it's fast enough to make it close to the warship without getting shot down. Basar Jin will have his forces attack on the ground to keep the Legion distracted while you plant another one of the devices to redirect the ether near the Dalriada. Cid modified this one so when they fly over the device with the focus, the ether will be channeled to it. Since Cid is one of the best pilots around, he plans on flying the ship himself as a means of making up for what his father did to Bajda, which led to all of this in the first place. Remember, in her vision, Makoto decides to go with him, because even though she saw herself fall, she did stop an attack that would have definitely taken down the ship. You don't want to admit it, but when Cid asks, you tell him that you saw it too. However, before you can say more, Makoto stops you, which makes Cid agree to let her come with him, after they head to Doma to finish some last minute work on his new weapon. Lilja tries to get a reading on the right ether current, but she can't find one, so she sends you out to set up another sensor. A few Imperials try to stop you, but they're no match for you, and you deal with them and plant the device. When you make it back to the camp, Lilja and Bwagi corner you and finally make you tell them what you and Makoto really saw. Bwagi wants to find a way to stop her from falling off the ship, but when Makoto sees something, it always happens. But since she didn't see herself die, that means there's still a chance to save her. Meanwhile, still locked in her cell, Masija thinks about what Queen Gunhilda had said to her at the end that had made her stop herself from killing the Bajdans. She told her that she had forgotten what it meant to be the queen. Her job was to save Bajda, and there is no Bajda without the people. With all of the preparations complete, it's time for everyone to play their part while Cid disables the Dalriada. Even with all of his preparations, Cid doesn't know how close he needs to get for his device to work against the warship, so he wants everyone to be ready to fall back, just in case things go wrong like they usually do. But this time they won't, because Makoto already saw that this part succeeds. But of course that's not the only thing that can go wrong. There's still Menenius and Lion to deal with. Regardless, this will be the final battle for Bajda. Everyone heads out to play their part, which means you and Lilja go to plant the device that will send the ether up to Cid. A lot of soldiers show up to stop the two of you, but you deal with them, letting Lilja do what she needs to do. And that's the end of things going smoothly, because the Dalriada powers up and fires the Allagan weapon they found at Cid. Their ship is quick enough to dodge the attack, but the shockwave damages Cid's weapon, making it lose its link to Lilja's device. On the ground, Lion is having fun bringing down Bajdan soldiers, and since the device is no longer linked to the airship, Lilja has to send up a flare so Cid can find her and link the ether to his weapon manually. Now, I'm sure you know that shooting a flare on an active battlefield doesn't just tell your friends where you are, but your enemies too, and they show up in force, shooting rockets at you and Lilja. She's hurt, badly, but she manages to activate the link before she passes out. Cid's device works, and the Dalriada is forced to make an emergency landing. That's when Makoto's vision plays out and she's knocked from the airship. However, Fran swoops in on a mount that I definitely want and catches Makoto. Granted, she should still be extremely dead, but we'll just ignore the physics and celebrate the fact that not only did Makoto survive, but the plan worked. Step 1's complete. However, Lilja's injuries are bad and she has to be sent to Doma for emergency surgery. Makoto wants to go with her because she feels responsible, because you know people always feel like it's somehow their fault when one of their friends gets hurt. True or not, they head off while you, along with your reinforcements from Dalmasca, go to attack the Dariata and finish this war. Aboard the ship, Lion is trying to get Menenius to realize that they've lost and they need to retreat. He gets it, but he refuses to let the resistance get the relic. He plans on evacuating his troops, dropping the relic back in the hole where they found it, and blowing up the ship to seal it in, killing himself in the process as penance for his failure. Lion refuses to let his friend go out like that. He's going to help him deal with the relic, and then they'll both go report their failure to Gabranth, and deal with the consequences. It doesn't take that much convincing to get Menenius to agree. Meanwhile, the Save the Queen sword teleports itself into Masija's cell, and when she touches it, it takes her away. With your new allies leading the charge, you all fight your way into the Dariata. The Legion is not playing around when it comes to keeping you out. They do everything from sending massive machines at you to using Auracite to transform into powerful Lucavi. But that doesn't stop you from reaching the heart of the ship, where Menenius is waiting in front of the Allagan monstrosity that is locked in some type of prison. Menenius is having a hard time taking you all on by himself, even with his impressive mech suit, so Lion joins in the fight. Now let's just take a second to realize that Lion is 68 years old. So apparently the two things that don't matter in Eorzea are age and fall damage. With a lot of effort, you bring the two down, but Menenius has no intention of letting you leave the ship alive. He goes to activate the self-destruct, but the Allagan thing that they have locked up shatters the restraints and attacks. Menenius is shocked because the restraints could have held the Ultima weapon, which means this thing is way stronger. It breaks the platform that you're all standing on, but you manage to jump to safety. Then you jump down to do what you do best and fight the Allagan weapon. But this thing is a little bit different from the Allagan relics you're used to. The Diablo armament is a bioorganic weapon designed to be a vessel for a powerful void scent, probably Diabolos, judging from the way it looks and attacks. And it is strong. Very strong. But with a long fought battle, you manage to knock it down. Basal Jin and the others arrive, and he catches sight of the unconscious Lion and Menenius. He sends his men to grab them, but beams of energy burst from where Diablo had fallen, forcing you all to retreat. You all run away as the thing flies back into battle. It attacks Lion, and he gets ready to accept his death, but Menenius takes the hit for his friend before Diablo flies outside and unleashes his power on the land. It builds up for an attack that would destroy you all, but Masija and Queen Gunhilda appear and attack it, destroying the relic and saving you all. The Save the Queen's sword falls to the ground, and you find Masija lying on the ground nearby. They try to heal her, but her injuries are too severe. Not that it mattered, because she was a traitor to Bastia. Had she lived, she would have likely been executed anyway. She asks you to finish her off so she can at least have an honorable death, but Basal Jin steps up to grant her request. With that, the battle's over. The remnants of the 4th Legion that were in Bastia are scattered, and everyone heads back to Gongos to celebrate their victory. Basal Jin's already started working on the constitution for their new nation, and after what happened to Masija, he plans on merging the principles of Bastia with those of the 4th Legion, so people won't have any reason to be discriminated against by class. He understood why Masija and others turned on Bastia. The nation wasn't fair to everyone, but this time he plans on making sure that it is. Just because some good ideas came from their enemies didn't mean they weren't good ideas, and he won't throw them away just because he didn't like the people who thought of them. That's a mark of a good leader, and that made me respect the man far more than I did when this all started. Even more good news comes when Sid and Makoto make it back. Lilja is doing fine after her surgery, although she's trying to leave the hospital a bit early, but after Sid threatens to send Jesse to watch her, she settles down. Fran offers you her gratitude, but the war isn't really over until she gets Gabranth out of Dalmasca, which means we'll be going there at some point in the future. While everyone's celebrating, Makoto heads off to check on the Save the Queen. The weapon's ether reserves are completely gone, so the essence of Queen Gunhilda is gone, which means the Queen died yet again to save her people. Out in Dalmasca, Lion returns to Gabranth to let him know what happened, and while his reaction isn't as strong as Lion thought it should be since he lost one of his most loyal followers, 3 things need to be taken note of. First, is Gabranth doesn't have much time left to complete his mission, so he's likely sick. Second, is Lion has to be punished for the failure in Bastia, so the soldiers won't think that failures won't have consequences. And third, and probably the most important, the Diablo weapon and the Save the Queen were only 2 of the relics Menenius had found in Bajra. Apparently he found 2 more, and these 2 managed to make it back to the Legion, and I can guarantee you they'll prove as deadly as the other 2. This concludes the story of the Bajran Resistance and the Save the Queen. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video.